Welcome to AgriMinds, the podcast where we explore the intersections of personal growth and professional success in the ag industry. I'm Kacee, your host. Thank you for joining me as we dive in to the different strategies and insights that will help you level up your life and career. From mental health to leadership development, we're going to cover it all. So sit back and get ready to grow with AgriMinds. Welcome to another episode of the AgriMinds podcast. Today I have Jackie Nix with me. Her and I connected on LinkedIn actually a couple of months ago, and it was one of those things where it was just like, wow, I really like what you're doing. You really like what I'm doing. We should probably know each other. And so it's been a mutually beneficial relationship. And so I thought it would be great to have her on the podcast to share what she is doing today and how she's advocating for the industry, and maybe share a little bit about how she got to this point. So welcome to AgriMinds, Jackie.
Oh, thank you so much, Kacee. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy you are here. Tell listeners a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, wow. Well, it all began. I am one of those untraditional women in agriculture. I am the daughter of a coal miner, but I was surrounded by farming community. My neighbors were farms, so I spent more time at my neighbor's farm than I did my own home growing up, and fell in love. And so, especially at that time, I'm 54, so it's back then, if you weren't related and going to inherit land or whatever, of like your options were be a vet. So that's what I thought I wanted to be. Went on, got several degrees in animal science, but then I went into ag. First started extension, as a lot of your guests I think have done, but then went into ag industry. And I was a ruminant nutritionist, so I did feed for 17 years. And then here's the plot twist. We were bought by a different company. I decided I needed a change. Then also a time that my dad was going through the late stages of Parkinson's disease. So I thought I was going to take a temporary sabbatical. After he had passed, then I just got to like, I'm restless. I need something new. And then I decided that, I'm going to be a children's author. So animal scientists I'm going to write children's books. A really weird story of how I came to this is I realized that my passion was teaching and advocating for agriculture. And then when I really got to in the introspection and all, and I realized the people that I spoke to and had the debates with, their ideal of what a real quote unquote farm really looked like old McDonald's. And I'm like, you know what? With a lot of our society, their only exposure to farms are children's books. And that's where I made the decision of, you know what, I'm going to create children's books that portray agriculture realistically and show all the science and technology that I think is so cool.
Kudos to you for taking the initiative and seeing a need or a gap, if you will. But also, I'm sure that the process of getting to that point of, one, getting the right content to be able to speak in a way that the children understood and it was enjoyable for them, but you're also educating the adult who is reading the book to them, and self-publishing and going through that whole entire process is something that doesn't just like get taught in school. That's not something somebody understands on their own. You had to do probably a little bit of work to get to that point. Would you mind sharing a little bit about like what that process looked like and how you began writing children's books?
Oh, wow. The writing is the easy part. And as you say, it's a job. It's an entrepreneurship, because I had to teach myself business. Of course, I was in corporate America. I know how business works, but of doing it myself. And also that's part of I'm a lifelong learner, a polymath, and the challenge. Oh, hey, teach yourself something that you've never done and, nobody in your family's ever done. And the thing is that with this, creating the product, and this is for any product, whether we're talking about, selling vegetables or direct to consumer beef or whatever, creating the product is the easy part. It's the getting it out, finding your customer base, getting it to them in a profitable way that's where the creativity and the real work comes in. And it's a challenge, but so far it's an enjoyable challenge. But I'm also the type of person that I want to get this going. Right now, I'm only self-publishing myself. I see in the future getting this to the point where I'm not only just publishing my books, but bringing on other authors and or illustrators to also the mission for my company, which is Maven, is to publish books that educate and inspire children of all ages regarding the role of agriculture in their lives, and to just educate everybody that who think they don't depend on agriculture and remind them that they do.
I would like to hear maybe a little bit more about like your mindset through it all. Like, I know you said that when someone tells you that you shouldn't do it or can't do it, it like gives you that extra motivation to do it anyway. But was there a support system in place, or did you have any mentors or resources that you used through that process to kind of help guide you, keep you motivated, things like that?
Yes and no. As I said, when I first quit my corporate job as a nutritionist, I did invest in a coaching program. So that was where I was undergoing the personal development and, doing that introspection, like you talk about in your masterminds of, find out where your strengths really are. And my strength is I've always been really good at teaching things. And I'm a natural artist. I'm a self-taught artist. I can draw anything. So I had done all that and fell into meeting my co-illustrator, Karen White, and she helped me get published because she knew the publishing part. So, that was just me attracting the person I needed at the time. And she was wonderful, but she didn't understand the subject matter, but she got my toe dipped into the water. And then I kind of went about for the first 6 months after publishing, and I did okay, but I kind of got as far as I could on my own. And then I started reaching out for support, like you're talking about, reaching out. There's a group called Women in Publishing, and I attended those seminars, and then I've become parts of other author groups. So within the publishing industry, specifically self-publishing industry, I have reached out and grabbed these folks. But
I think you're right, because, if I look back on like my grandparents or even my parents and the way that they do things, they absolutely were like, I can't ask for help because I don't want people to assume I don't know how to do it. It's up to me to get things done. Like, I don't need to depend on anyone, nor should I depend on anyone. And then you kind of start to gradually see the change in that mindset of, why not tap into those around me? Why not lean on someone else? And not saying that we're dumping our stuff off on them, but they're taking part of a certain area that maybe we don't want to or can't quite add to our plate at the time. And so I think it's important to note that you did kind of tap into that. I mean, you kind of have this mentality of like, I should do everything on my own, but there is a point in time where I may need to reach out my hand and get a little bit of something to either teach me so that way I can do it on my own moving forward, or I can, delegate that portion
Well,
from here on out.
I think we get in our own way, especially
Mm,
as entrepreneurs or, small businesses where staff is limited, thinking that I have to do it all. I don't have the money for this. I don't have the time for that. And we are our own worst enemies because, uh, uh, you know, like you talk about, of finding your genius, we're naturally gifted in certain things and other things we suck at. For me, the very first person I'm going to hire is an accountant. I hate accounting. I can't stand it.
same.
And that's already on my list of first person. And and then the next one is, oh hey, then I'm going to get a salesperson. And the naturally the best running businesses have a balance of all these personality types who can do all these things and do them happily, not begrudgingly. Because there's some of these things I do, and I may do them halfway decent, but begrudgingly. And it just works out better for everybody when we're all happy. A book that was recommended to me is called Who Not How. And it's talking about, releasing yourself into, instead of, and I think that's part of the overwhelm of, oh my God, I have all these things to do. And oh my God, how am I going to pull all this stuff off? But then sitting back of like, you know what, you don't have to do all these things. And sometimes it's not a matter of budget, especially for, myself, I'm a solopreneur. I'm the only person. I'm everything. We can barter of like, okay, hey, you're good at promotion and I'm good at ideas and creativity and graphic design, and we can help one another. And that's why you and I met of, oh hey, let's see how we can collaborate and work together. And I'm seeing that more now than I probably ever have in all of my career. Once again, I'm 54 years old. It was always like, even in extension, it was like, oh, I'm in this county and I can't work with this person in this other county because my county is my little fiefdom. And now it's all about collaboration and let's be more together and be greater than the sum of us together. So I think all of that, and it can even relate back to farming, that there's just, we need to be creative. That as you're talking about trying to, with some of your other guests of doing social media or, maybe doing cut flowers or doing agritourism or whatever, there are so many different avenues to monetize, to support this lifestyle, that all we're only limited by our imagination.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've noticed a trend, and I've mentioned this before, that it just seems to be that the majority of the guests that I have on the AgriMinds podcast have been entrepreneurs, which was not strategic. It just happens to be that way. But there's definitely a couple of episodes where we have employees of companies. And I think it's super okay. Back to one point you made about the art of bartering, which it's so cool to see this coming back up, because I feel like we used to do this in the, several generations ago. Like that was how you got by, was bartering and trading different resources or goods because you had something that somebody else didn't, and vice versa. And I think that my generation and younger definitely got to the point where we were so used to having resources right at our fingertips that we lost a sight of getting really creative, utilizing our resources. And that was something that was drilled into my head at our small rural town school of utilize your resources. Tap into those around you. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. But I talk to other people from other schools or, other areas of the country, and they don't know how to tap into and utilize them. They just know that it's out there and they use them, but they don't trade back and forth. It's a take, not necessarily a give and take type of scenario. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, especially in the age of the internet, where literally the information of the world is at your fingertips, it's just that it's overload of not knowing where to go. For instance, myself as an extension agent, where, even people in agriculture, so many didn't realize what the extension service could do for them and didn't utilize those resources like they could or should have. And I think we just get in our little bubbles, and I am guilty of this as well. I'm just plodding along and thinking I have to figure everything out on my own. And I think that's where where you're talking about having groups, whether it's a mastermind group or a group of friends, or these the great thing about the pandemic is discovering Zoom, because I'm part of about 2 or 3 Zoom groups where we just get together and we're literally in different countries, and we can, bounce ideas, and I have access to people that I never had access before, and it's wonderful. But I think we got to open ourselves up and realize that, oh, hey, we don't have to shoulder everything ourselves, and just open ourselves up to the possibilities. And I've been surprised at where some of these resources come from.
I love the statement of opening yourself up to possibilities, because I think for the longest time, I didn't allow myself to do that. I just thought this was the way things were supposed to go. This is the trajectory of where my career is going. This is the way my family is going to be raised. And it was so scary to stop and pause and analyze and assess the situation and see if what we're doing is actually worthwhile. And are we putting our blinders on to other ways of doing things and other possibilities and opportunities? And when we stop and look around, it's like, wow, I could have done this a whole lot easier. And I think it was the episode prior to this one with Tanner Winterhoff, and he said something about it's more work before it's less work, but then it's just different work. But the key is the different work could be consisting of work that you actually enjoy, and it doesn't feel like work at that point. Like doing the work smarter doesn't feel harder necessarily. And so I think you're right. Like it does make sense for us to just stop and be like, okay, let's analyze what's going on. Let's reflect and debrief. And is this the way that it should go? And does this door over here actually open us up to such a better possibility of where things could go?
There's this meme that I live my life by now is what I'm doing creating the life I want? If doing what I'm doing, with any business, if we get all caught up in the things that we dislike, and then it becomes stressful and it becomes just another chore, do you really need to be there? Get back to, it might be at that point of, oh, wait a minute, I'd be better off being employed for somebody else and just doing the parts I like rather than being a business owner. Or you really like the business part and you really like the risk taking and the excitement. It's almost like a gambling addiction of like, oh yeah, I get to do this, I get to do that. And as I was going forward, I have always been an employee of someone else, and I've never had family members who owned their own business. So this was so much me striking out into the unknown. And I think the pandemic had something to do with it as well, because it was kind of like, what do I have to lose? I'm an empty nester. My child is grown, and I kind of got of like, you know what, I could die tomorrow, and why not do this? This is something that can sustain me later on, where I can, kind of create this company, and whether I sell it off or whether I keep it going or whatever. And then it's also of, if I get bored with it and want to go try something else, there's nothing stopping me from doing so. And so that just really appealed. But then also I really had to retrain my brain on, being okay with, calculated risk taking, and not having everything set, not seeing, it's like taking a staircase and you can't see the top, it's obscured by clouds. All you got to do is see the next step. You don't have to see the whole staircase. All you got to do is see the next step. And it's also like flying a plane. It doesn't have to be straight. You can detour around. There's we're not a failure if we go about it in a different way. Just because I thought it was going to be like, oh, this is what I'm going to do, if I go and detour and do something totally different, that's okay too.
I think that the message here is that, we're not encouraging everyone to just quit their job and become an entrepreneur, but it is encouraging to say, you know what, there is a risk and it's a little scary, but take the chance on yourself, because tomorrow isn't given, it's not promised to us.
And you don't have to quit your job. You can have a side gig.
Yeah.
Of, there's just, don't deny yourself pleasure. We're meant to be on this earth to enjoy. It's not about toil and struggle and sacrifice. We're supposed to enjoy it. We're supposed to enjoy doing things we love, being around people we love, do things that cause you joy, do more things that give you joy. So, in my case of not only, especially with my extension background, of I was always very good at creating content, because of course in extension you had zero budget, you had to do things on a shoestring. So, I had to create content out of thin air. So that kind of went hand in hand with me writing children's books. And for instance, with my book Modern Farms that I have currently, I have one book, and then I have another book that I'm working on for number 2. But Modern Farms is just a simple introduction to food production, and it links foods back to the farms. Milk comes from dairy farm, tomatoes come from a tomato farm, and also stressing to the readers that farms are specialized. It's not old McDonald's farm where everything, you get peaches and oranges and tomatoes and corn all from the same farm. No, you do not. And, so that was just a real simple introduction. But then I created an activity book, and then I also created a teacher's guide and all the support things to go with it. But in doing that, I'm also a good presenter. I'm a good teacher, going back once again to my extension experience. And so that's also an offshoot of, okay, I sell books, but then I'm also a public speaker, and there's that offshoot. And then I am the illustrator and I'm creating art content. So then there's, once you create art, then you can create merch, and then you can, market that. So even I am kind of like, of all the things that are possible, and, just not shutting yourself down. Like, here is a recent light bulb moment for me. With my book, Modern Farms, at least here in Alabama, kindergartens have a unit that talks about farms. Had difficulty just because of things that are going on in education right now, of getting a foot in the door to do that. So my idea is to get sponsorship to give away the book into the schools. I kind of had my little blinders on, thinking it's like, oh, I have to hit up ag companies, ag industry. But then I'm like, no, you don't have to just limit yourself. Anybody who's looking at those same customers. So in my case, it's like, oh, you know what? Local insurance agents. Who wants to be in front of young families who have kindergarten age children? Pediatricians. Getting that word out of sharing that there are ag accurate books out there. My first book, Modern Farms, is an introduction to food production, and it covers a little bit of everything. It does row crops, it does fruits and vegetables, it does animal agriculture. My second book that I am working on is going to tackle cattle and the environment. Myself as an animal scientist, especially specializing in cattle, this is my sweet spot. So it is called Bonnie the Bovine and Her Bodacious Burps, The Science of Cattle and the Environment. And just sharing these types of books, you can give them away as, baby shower gifts or Christmas and birthday, and just getting these things out to people who maybe don't necessarily, because as you said, you're a row crop. You don't know as much about cattle maybe as somebody like me who's trained in it. Even in agriculture, we have our little silos. As I'm creating content, I'm learning every day of, how peanuts are grown versus how, avocados are grown. And there's so much diversity that we don't even understand in our own industry of how specialized and some of the really cool tech and things going on, what we're doing with artificial intelligence and self-driving tractors, and using drones to go out and measure the looking for disease in fields for scouting. It was like,
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And I think you hear all the time, like if I go back to like the Riley Hospital commercials or St. Jude hospitals or whatever, Shriners hospitals, they're, all those commercials always are like, we want to see books that look like us, like children who have missing body parts or were born in certain ways or certain races, right? Like we want to see books that reflect kids who look like us. And my kids say the same thing of like, how come there's, not a book about a little farm kid or riding in the combine with the grandpa, or like there's just not a whole lot of that are accurate. If I purchase a book,
they're all have the open face tractors and so on and so forth.
We don't farm like that anymore. And so I love the concept of a book that is accurately depicting what our industry looks like. And I mean, even my 7-year-old, we were watching I think it's called Barnyard is just the name of the movie, and there was a male dairy cow with udders. And my son, even my 7-year-old son, he's like, wait a second, that's a boy cow with udders. And I'm like, I don't even want to talk about this conversation right now. Like, I'm not ready. But it should accurately depict that in science, there is not a male dairy cow with udders that you can get milk from. It just doesn't exist. It's not biological. So I love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. These are the types of books that I think farming families want to be able to read to their kids at night, that it's something relatable that they're talking about, they're educating their kids on, but also we're educating those outside of the agriculture industry too. And so I think you're doing just an amazing job. So thank you for following your intuition and chasing that passion of yours and sharing it with the world.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, Jackie, this has been a very quick 40 minutes or so. And so I just want to say thank you again for joining me on the AgriMinds podcast. This has been such a good conversation, and I'm so glad that you agreed to share all of your information and your journey with us here on the AgriMinds podcast.
Thank you.